Ready, Bonnie?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. It is exactly 9:00 a.m. and I would like to call to order a regular meeting of the Board of Retirement. Bonnie, if you could make the usual announcements and take the roll call.
Thank you. This meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting, so I will do a roll call of the trustees to confirm attendance. Mr. Pryor?
Here.
Ms. Ginsburg?
Good morning here.
Good morning, Ms. Gray?
Good morning.
Mr. Santos?
Morning.
Mr. Oakham? I'll come back to you, Mr. Oakham. Mr. Moore?
I'm here.
Mr. Kehoe?
Present.
Mr. Robbins?
I'm here.
Mr. Harris?
I'm here.
Ms. Zapanta? Good morning. And Mr. Oakham?
I'm here.
Chair Bernstein.
Here.
Great. Staff participating in the meeting include the CEO, Santos Kryman, Deputy CEO, Louis Lugo, AEO, JJ Popowich and Laura Guglielmo, Chief Counsel, Stephen Rice, Legal Staff Counsel, Frank Boyd and Michael Herrera, CIO, John Grable, LACERA's Medical Advisor, Dr. Glenn Arisman, Legislative Affairs Officer, Barry Liu. Disability retirement staff include Ricky Contreras, Tamara Caldwell, Carrie Wilson, Vicki Neely, Ricardo Salinas, and Hernan Barrientos. Disability litigation staff include Eugenia Durr and Vincent Lim. Division managers and staff include Ted Granger, Carly Natoya, Cynthia Martinez, Cassandra Smith, Alan Cochran, Carlos Barrios, James Beasley, Roberta Van Nortrick, Kathy Delino, Sammy Vuong, Louis Gittins, and consultants include Jolene Williams, Penny Campbell, George Milston, Manny Abascal, and Rachel Bosley. Trustees, please use the Zoom chat option to be placed in the queue. At this time, we ask all meeting participants to mute their mics until you are ready to speak. And now we may proceed with the agenda.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. We're on to item 2, approval of the minutes of our regular meeting of September 1st.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gray, seconded by Oakham. Roll call, please.
I'll come back to you, Ms. Ginsburg.
Yes.
Bonnie, we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Ms. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Ms. Zapanta,
Aye.
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. We're on to item 3, public comment. I'm not aware of any public comment speakers.
We have not received any.
We will move on then to item 4, other communications. We will start with our August 2021 All-Stars. JJ, take it away.
Thank you very much. So this is the time of the month when we recognize those people who have gone above and beyond and helped out their fellow staff members and members. And so as you can see on the screen, we have our All-Stars for this month, Angela Ward and Paolo Johns. Our web watcher is Persian Petrov, as we know him as Percy, and rideshare is Lipping Lee. So thank you very much for all that you do, and we appreciate you very much. We also have another recognition that we'd like to share at this time. And I think, Bonnie, you have the screen to pull up.
Yes, I'm pulling it up now. One moment.
Alrighty. So, you know, in July, we had a momentous decision here at LACERA where we launched LACERA.com. And this was a truly tremendous team effort that spanned over a year to get done, over a couple of years to get done. And we thought that it would be appropriate that we would recognize all of the individuals who participated in that. And so as you'll see on the screen, Bonnie's going to scroll through all of the folks that worked on this project. It truly was a tremendous effort with many, many different divisions and subject matter experts and staff working on it. So we want to thank them for all of their hard work. And in addition to being recognized today, they're all going to receive a little memento. I don't know if this is going to show. Maybe if I put it against my black jacket, it'll be better. No, probably not. Anyways, it's a little recognition of all of their efforts and the big accomplishment this is for LACERA. It's a symbol of everything that we're doing to advance the organization and improve our customer experience and our customer service. So thank you very much to everybody on the team.
And that is a great list of names. Thanks to everyone who participated in getting that off the ground. Would anyone else like to say anything before I move on to the CEO report? Applause, I see that. So if any of you who worked on that are here, just please know that we're all extending our gratitude for all the good work and for getting that off the ground. We're really excited about that development. And Santos, we are now on to the CEO's report.
Great. Thank you, Chair Bernstein. Trustees, good morning, everyone. Just a few quick items. I know we have a very full calendar, but in addition to the information that was provided in the CEO report, I wanted to make sure that I let you know that yesterday the Board of Supervisors at their meeting approved the county CEO's recommendation related to LACERA's positions. I know that we have a closed session item, so I'll reserve my comments, my more detailed comments for that particular portion of the meeting. But just know that the vote was unanimous. They did unanimously reject our submittals, although there's kind of a cross. There's some good news and some bad news in what they did. So we can discuss that further in closed session. I also wanted to let you know that the strategic plan, we've extended the deadline for a couple of weeks in terms of submittals. We did receive 3 proposals. I was not satisfied with the number of proposals that we received. I did not review them for content or for quality. I just thought that we needed to go out for another couple of weeks and solicit for more proposals. And so we're in the process of doing that. The other thing also that I wanted to mention is that we have finally completed our inquiries of our staff regarding the COVID. So we did receive responses from all of the staff as well as all of our temporary employees. I'm happy to say that we're about 88% vaccinated, completely vaccinated in terms of staff. There are a handful of individuals, I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 or 36 individuals that have applied for some sort of religious or medical exemption. And so we're in the process of reviewing all of those, and we'll be notifying the staff of the decisions that we will be making in terms of granting those exceptions moving forward. We do have a number of employees. I believe there's 8 employees that are out on leave that we have counted as unvaccinated because we have not been able to get the information from them at this particular point in time. So we just put them in the unvaccinated line. So there's about 53 individuals, including those 18 that are unvaccinated. And so we're working through all of those now as well. So that's really everything that I have at this point in time. And one other thing in terms of COVID, we are in the process of negotiating with Fulgent, which is the vendor that will assist us with the testing of our exempted employees that have a religious or medical exemption. And so we had to delay our return to office for a few weeks until we have that particular those protocols and those procedures and that vendor in place. They're also going to assist us with tracking the information and assisting us with making sure that that all of the tests are being processed accordingly. So I know that Mr. Lugo and Laura and JJ have been working very hard, and their teams have been working hard on everything COVID related. So if there's any details that you have or any questions you may have, now would be a good opportunity to ask the staff and myself. So with that, Mr. Bernstein, I turn it back to you.
I have no one in queue. Are there any questions?
And Alan, I have one. We had 10 exposed 5 confirmed positive, and in office before positive test is 2. Okay, and that occurred through September 20th of 21 for the month.
That's correct.
Now, so there are only 2 in the office that were confirmed positive?
JJ, do you know the answer to that question?
I believe that's correct. And as far as I know, they're both doing well, so.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Bernstein, if I may.
Mr. Santos?
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mr. Kryman.
Good morning.
You reported that LACERA is in the process of retaining, I believe you said Fulton.
Fulgent.
Is that the same vendor that the county retained for all county employees to submit the vaccine verification?
Yes, it's the same vendor. We were not able to piggyback on the county's contract. We have to negotiate our own contract with them. And so that was part of the delay that we've experienced, because Fulgent, quite frankly, was busy negotiating with multiple agencies. And we're a very tiny portion of that. So we had to delay.
I see. No, I get that. I guess my question is, if LACERA needed to inquire, let's say, about me and coming in as a county employee to get some advice regarding retirement, would that system be able to use to verify whether or not I am in compliance with the LA County requirement to submit vaccination proof?
I don't
So,
answer, but well, go ahead, Louis.
no, it is a separate, and just to confirm, we did request the county to try to piggyback off that contract, and they did respond back saying that we couldn't, which is why we went on a direct contract with Fulgent. So my understanding, and JJ's done a good job of working directly with the vendor, is there are 2 separate databases. So we would not be able to verify or validate anything outside of our population of employees.
That being said, we're still requiring all of the public health protocols, social distancing, masking, just so that we do everything possible to keep our staff as well as our members safe.
If I may make,
Including providing proof of vaccination?
We're not asking for proof of vaccination from our members. No. From our staff, yes, but not from our members.
Okay, thank you.
Ms.
if I
Gray?
may, just a side comment. It's interesting how the county kicked us out with respect to piggybacking with Fulgent, because, you know, we're not part of the county in this regard.
Yeah, but we noted that as well.
Oh, okay.
Pick and choose, Vivian, pick and choose.
Yes, Ron, exactly.
All right. Santos, thank you very much for that report. We will move on to item 5, disability retirement applications on consent. And got him. Okay. We will start with safety SCD applications numbers 540D through 549D. Be happy to take a motion.
So moved.
Second, Pryor.
So moved by Oakham and seconded by Pryor. We do need a roll call.
Ms. Ginsburg,
Yes.
Ms. Gray,
Yes,
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Ms. Sabanta,
Yes.
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Bonnie. We are now on to safety SCD applications for fire and lifeguards on consent 1398B through 1408B.
Motion, Pryor.
Second.
Moved by Pryor. Who is the second on that?
Mr. Robbins,
Mr. Robbins, thank you. We'll take a vote. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pryor,
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg,
Yes.
Ms. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Aye.
Mr. Oakham,
yes,
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Ms. Zapanta,
Yes.
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
And finally, we have general member SCD applications, applications numbers 2277C through 2290C.
so moved,
Second.
Moved by Oakham, is that Kehoe seconding?
Yes.
Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Ginsburg,
Yes.
Ms. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
yes,
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins, Ms. Zapanta,
Yes.
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. That ends item 5. We're on to item 6, consent items. I've had no requests for items to be pulled for discussion from consent, so I would be happy to entertain one motion for items 6A through D.
so moved,
Second.
Moved by Oakham, seconded by Robbins. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ginsburg,
Yes.
Ms. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
yes,
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Ms. Zapanta,
Yes.
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We're on to item 7. We have nothing excluded from consent. So we're on to item 8A. This is an item regarding the Brown Act submitted by Mr. Rice. Mr. Rice, did you want to talk?
Just briefly to clarify that this is the first meeting we're holding under the new law that the governor signed on September 16th that permits teleconference meetings going forward, even though the executive order that we've been operating under previously during COVID has now lapsed as of the end of September. In order to continue to hold teleconference meetings under the new law, the board must make findings every 30 days. First, the emergency order must remain in effect. The order still is in effect, the statewide order, and it was issued under the proper law required by the new Brown Act statute. The board must also find that the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of the board to safely meet in person, and then finally, and this is an alternative finding, but that the state or local officials continue to impose or recommend social distancing, and both of those two conditions, and you only need one of them, but both those two conditions do exist here. If the board makes this finding, we will be able to hold teleconference meetings of the board and its committees for the next 30 days. And then this will be a monthly item going forward as long as the state of emergency exists. And with that, happy to answer any questions. There are some other requirements in law concerning the method by which we hold these teleconference meetings, which are slightly different from previous, but they're technical and they're within our ability to comply with. Happy to answer any questions.
I would move that we make these findings in direct teleconferencing under section 54953E, so that we may continue for the next 30 days.
I'll second it. And Vivian, would you mind adding that we add this to the consent calendar on a monthly basis?
I would agree, yes.
I have a question for staff. Where are we in terms of staff being back in the office? It looked from the CEO report like it was an October 1st projected cutoff. What kind of presentation of staff do we currently have in the office physically?
Yeah, Chair Bernstein, this is Lewis. We currently have about 16% of our staff coming into the office. We also have appointments, members coming in by appointment only. As Mr. Kryman mentioned in his CEO report, we were going to welcome staff back October 1st, but our logistical planning with Fulgent has been pushed back. So we anticipate once we get that contract solidified and the testing process and protocols outlined, that will give a 2-week notice of that return to office date to comply with our SEIU MOU. So within that time period, we don't have an exact return date because we're working with Fulgent and we don't want to provide a date and then have to push it back again. So once we have the logistics squared away, we'll have a 2-week advance notice and then we'll have a effective return to office date.
Thank you. Let's take a vote.
Ginsburg,
Yes.
Ms. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Santos,
Aye.
Mr. Oakham,
Yeah,
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Keough,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Ms. Zapanta, Ms. Zapanta. Okay, Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
Thank you very much. We're on to 8B, a recommendation submitted by James Beasley regarding the purchase of cyber liability insurance effective October 9th.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chair and trustees. I don't have much to add since we already went to your board last month to request authorization to purchase the policy, the cyber policy. However, we got the quotes back, the remaining quotes, and it exceeded $350,000. So we're coming to your board to request approval to purchase the policies that is mentioned in the memo. We have the LACERA's insurance brokers from Carter Campbell and Associates, Penny Campbell and Jolene Williams, to answer any of your insurance related questions that you may have. So this concludes my presentations. So if you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to assist you.
Thank you, James. Are there any questions or comments?
I have a question.
I do.
Go ahead,
And then
Sean.
Mr. Keough.
I just wanted to ask, have we analyzed this on a cost benefit and made sure that this was worthwhile in getting? I'm assuming the answer is yes, but when we're getting close to $500,000 a year, have we looked at if we kind of self-insured ourselves on these issues, what the ultimate cost would be, and is it worthwhile to continue out sourcing this with another insurance company?
Yes, we did look at that option. Louis, would you like to answer that question, or would you be okay with me to proceed?
Oh, continue to proceed, James. You've been working with the
Okay,
brokers.
so we are looking at that option. We looked at an option of self-insuring, possibly 10 to 5 million, and just purchasing 10 million worth of coverage in the future. So this time around, we'll go ahead and purchase what we've already been quoted for and looking at. But in the future, we definitely want to go with possibly doing $10 million.
Got it. So kind of like a gap insurance situation.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
But
All right.
Trustee Keough, we will definitely in the future provide that analysis to you all.
Right.
And highlight it for you, and we will make our recommendations accordingly.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
What have we had in the past, James? How much?
Well, 20 million in limits.
Okay, this is my question, and I just looking at this. The first 5 million, which is probably in the first 10 million, probably greater risk than 11 to 20, the premiums are less. So now you go from an excess 2 of 5 million to 148,000, and the same with excess 3. Why would those premiums be higher than the exposure of 5 to 10 million? It seems to me that those premiums should be less because they have less exposure.
Correct. That's a very good question, and I'll refer that to our brokers. Jolene, there you are.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, this is Jolene Williams. Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee.
Keough.
I'm happy to answer that question. The first 2 layers are incumbent carriers. They have been on the policy for the last 2 years. We were able to negotiate very good terms with those incumbent carriers. However, the remaining $10 million went to market to new carriers. And with the hard market that we're currently in with cyber, it's a very volatile market. And unfortunately, governmental entities have been hardest hit with a 1,500% increase in attacks in just the last 3 years. The premiums have substantially increased. So therefore, generally speaking, you are correct. There would usually be a lesser premium as the limits go higher. However, in anticipation that there would be a large loss based on the number of records that LACERA maintains, the full limit is priced based on anticipating a large loss. So those carriers are pricing more like what a primary carrier would price.
Thank you.
The only thing I would say, as we said before, we got 300 grand. You got 300,000, you're talking $1.5 million over a 5-year period. I would hope with the money we're spending with IT and the expertise we have from the outside, that this would minimize our exposure to this kind of claim. And down the road, we don't have to spend, I think as Sean said, $484,000. So I think we need to take, I won't be here, but I think you need to take that into consideration a year from now when this is renewed.
Correct.
I would entertain a motion.
I'll make it.
Do that.
Moved by Oakham, seconded by anyone?
Or,
Okay,
Okay, I'll take the roll call now. Ms.
roll
Ginsburg,
call, please, yes.
Yes.
Ms. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Santos,
Aye.
Mr. Oakham,
yes,
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Kehoe,
Yes.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Ms. Zapanta,
yes,
Chair Bernstein.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, James and Jolene. We are now on to reports. 9A for discussion purposes is the ongoing conversation about leadership selection for the Board of Retirement. The staff updating us on this?
Yes, good morning, Chair Bernstein and Board Trustees. So this is a follow-up to the initial discussion that we had earlier this month or last month. Last month, we had looked at different options for how to select the board officers, and the board's consensus was that we should go with a seniority-based system. So based on that concept, what we've done here is basically develop the key terms under that system that we would use to create a policy. But again, there are still some open-ended questions that we would need to answer before we can actually formulate, or solidify a policy. So in this memo, I basically laid out some of those key terms. So for example, if we're going to go with seniority list, one of the concerns was that the elected members and the appointed members, in terms of their years of seniority, there's a bit of a lack of parity there. So the first question to answer would be how do we sort of equalize that? One option would be to count a gap year for appointed trustees. Another option would be to use basically separate lists for elected and appointed members and kind of alternate them between odd and even years. So that's one question to answer. Then as far as another question to answer would be whether there should be a minimum service requirement. There was some talk about that in terms of how long, and then whether that should be required or simply recommended. And then lastly, the question of a person on a list being able to opt out. So can they indefinitely opt out an indefinite number of times, or if not, how many times can they opt out before, for example, their years are reset to 0? So basically, these are questions to be answered before we can really formulate a more definite policy on this.
Hi, Barry.
Yes.
Just questions on the minimum. I guess I'm not wrapping my head around this. The minimum service requirement, would that ever be a issue if we were appointing by seniority? Would you ever have a situation where somebody on the board didn't have at least 2 years?
I think we were envisioning that, you have someone who's brand new coming onto the board, if either elected or appointed with no experience. So on day one, should they serve, on the board? So I think the question was maybe they should have at least a year or so of service for doing so.
Okay, I guess my question is, I don't know if that's relevant if we're going to have at least 2 other people on the board without at least a year of service. Or 3 other people on the board. It wouldn't, okay. And then question for, actually, that was my only question. Thank you.
I would only make one comment, if I may, with respect to years of experience. It should be years of LACERA experience, because yes, others can be on different boards, but I like to think that LACERA is a unique board. And so a new trustee coming onto our LACERA board should have, at least a minimum of 2 years in order to be granted a leadership position.
Yes, that was the intention for LACERA board experience as opposed to, say, other outside boards.
Right. Well, we need to be specific, because there may be someone who may come on and say, hey, well, I do have experience. So.
Vivian, I totally agree with you on that. I remember my first year. I'm not sure at the end of the second year if I had all the answers and I understood, but it's a minimum of 2 years to really grasp what's going on at LACERA and understand, so you can have the leadership ability, to lead these meetings.
Mr. Oakham, I agree with you. After my second year, I was still getting acclimated to everything. But I think 2 years could be a minimum. I don't know if you're suggesting that maybe we do 3, which is fine with me. But 2 years is the very minimum for an overachiever.
So I agree with you.
If
Honestly,
I've got Mr. Santos in queue, and then if I may, I'd like to direct us to, we were tasked by staff to review some key terms for consideration. So Mr. Santos, by all means, make your comment, but then perhaps we can turn to the questions that staff asked us to address, and then obviously fill in anything else we want to get to. Mr. Santos?
You just read my mind, Mr. Bernstein. So that's my point. I think with regards to the first question regarding the gap year, I believe that for purposes of traveling, I believe it's international traveling, we are taking into consideration the 1 year gap, if I understand this correct, if I remember correctly. So if that is the case, where we are not penalizing the appointees for the year that the gap year, I think we should keep it consistent with regards to this particular policy. So that's my suggestion. With regards to having a separate list, I think if it's, when I read the memo, I was persuaded to do that, because that way, the way I understood it is to keep it equitable. We want to make sure that the electeds or appointees, for that matter, have the same opportunity as any other trustee on the board. So I think if having a separate list, it might be beneficial for what we're trying to accomplished. And I think I agree with the 1-year provision of the LACERA board. I think it will be important. Quite frankly, I think it's 2 years, but I will be fine with 1 year because it takes a year or two for any one of us to become familiar with the process and the procedures that we use on the board. So, 1 or 2 years is fine with me. Up to now, if somebody for whatever reason does not want to be or hold a leadership position, there should be no reason why that person should be compelled. Right? I mean, that's just my view. I mean, if I don't want to be the chair for argument's sake, well, leave me alone. That's my view, right? So that's my opinion. Thank you. And by the way, to staff, did a great job for how well the memo was written. Appreciate it.
I have a queue building up. I will, so if you wish to speak, please throw me a message and I'll be happy to add you to the queue. And I would just add to Mr. Sanders' final comment that there is effectively a punishment if you delay. Every time you serve under the system, your time gets wiped out. So every year you delay is a year that you're not accumulating later. So it penalizes people who choose to do it by making it take longer before they would get a second bite at the apple. I thought Mr. Santos's comments were spot on. I have Mr. Pryor with a question and then Mr. Kehoe in the queue.
Well, I'm going to turn that into a comment. So regarding gap year, I think it's not just appointed trustees, by the way. We don't want to leave the language so that an elected trustee could be elected, not be elected, and then be elected again, which has happened before. And then their time in between would count because we applied the wrong language. So it's possible for somebody to be 3 years off the board and then come back. We shouldn't allow that time. It just should be any time off the board is not applied towards the seniority. Just seems to make the most sense. Separate list for elected and appointed. No, I don't see the difference between elected and appointed as chair. Minimum service, it makes sense that you should have 1 year to me. I've seen people that have 1 year and are ready to be chair and do a great job. I've seen people with 10 years and really weren't very good chairs. So, and then opting out, it seems like anybody should be able to opt out if they wanted to. It doesn't seem like this should be compulsory service. And that would take care of how many times they opt out. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Liu, would you clarify something? I think the proposal is that for reappointed trustees, there would be credit for the gap year. Not that is the proposal, right? That's what we're considering as a yes?
Yes, that's correct. So, and that was the original, I guess, vision of the list, which is you have one list for each position, but one list that commingles your elected and appointed trustees. So the concern over that commingle list was, well, it looks like the elected trustees really have most of the service. So how do we sort of, equalize that with the appointeds? And so I believe your suggestion was, well, count the gap year, and that will hopefully try to equalize that. But that would be different than doing a separate list. So they're really two separate approaches. If we were to do a separate list, for example, we wouldn't count the gap year because that you're already kind of equalizing things by having separate lists. So really it's, do you want one commingle list with a gap years counted for appointees, or just kind of separate lists?
Okay. I have Mr. Kehoe next and then Mr. Harris.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Lee. You totally summarized exactly what I was going to point out. So either we do a separate list or we do a single list with a gap year. So my comments are that I do think we should do a single list with the gap year. I don't think having two separate elected and appointed lists is the right way to go. We might be elected or appointed or ex officio, But when we're sitting on this board as trustees, we are all equal trustees and we all have equal fiduciary responsibility. So creating a separate system internally, I don't think is a good route to go. But
So
in order
when you
to,
say with a gap year, sorry to interrupt, does that mean you think the gap year should be counted or not counted?
yeah, so let me clarify. I was going to do that right now. I don't think we should have a separate list. I think we should have a single list. So in that regard, we should have a gap year for appointed trustees, but not for elected trustees. If you don't win the election and you come back 3 years later, you shouldn't get that years of service, obviously. So we'll make sure the language doesn't do that, as you noted, Mr. Pryor. But I do think that the appointed trustees should get the gap year while they're on their rotation out. And that solves the inequality issue on that end, but allows us to, as we select, we're just selecting from one list. So my answer to question number one is yes, we should allow a gap year for appointed trustees. My answer to number two is no, we should not have a separate list. In regards to the minimum service, that's a no. I don't even know why we're discussing that, because there's going to be 0 cases where somebody has no experience, yet they're going to be serving as a chair of the board, unless every single person before them says, hey, welcome, this is your first year, none of us want the job. And then in that case, why would we restrict them from having that job? So I think we're getting way too in the weeds on that. That one's going to self-select itself. Nobody is going to be in a position to be able to opt to be the chair of the board unless they actually have years of service. So question number 3 should just be a no. We shouldn't even entertain that. And then in regards to number 4, opting out, I agree with Mr. Santos. It should be that people should be able to do it indefinitely. So I would say yes to that. People should be able to do it indefinitely. There's an inherent punishment, as Mr. Bernstein pointed out, where if you're gaining years of service for no purpose whatsoever. And then as far as the potential of, I think they mentioned in the report of a potential of gaming the system. Even if somebody did game the system, we're talking about a 5 or 10 year game that only gives you a 1-year benefit. So I just don't see anybody manipulating the system at that point. Sometimes people are busy 1 year, or they know next year that they're not. We don't need to clear out the list, just like we don't clear out the list for the international travel itself. So those are my thoughts on the recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. I have Mr. Harris in the queue.
I thank Mr. Kehoe for his cogent comments, because at first I was tending to lean towards the gap year not being counted for appointed, but I do see your point in that perhaps that does make sense. It would not make any sense to count gap years for people who have not been elected for a term or two. That to me doesn't make any sense at all. But I do appreciate your point as far as the appointees, just through no fault of their own, and it's just how the system works. And otherwise, I think it might be a little bit too slanted towards elected, because they aren't going to have that problem ever if they could just continue to get elected. And on every other point, I believe that there should be just one list is the way to go. You should be able to opt out. There's no reason not to do that. So yeah, I'm happy with doing it in that manner.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Robbins, did you wish to speak?
Only to comment that I never really gave much thought to this, but I think it's a good idea to move in this direction, and I'll be pretty much supportive of whatever the board wants to do and whatever is ultimately decided.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ginsburg.
I agree with Mr. Robbins. I think a list is good. I don't really have a strong opinion as to a single list or a separate list. If we do go down the route of a single list, the gap year being counted makes sense. As to minimum years of service, I defer to, again, what the board decides. 1 year is fine if we want to increase it to more. And yes, giving the option to opt out should be unlimited.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the queue?
I'm
So,
not in the queue. I'm
Mr.
not in the
Moore,
queue, but I got.
you are
I
now.
got yeah, I got a clarification. If you opt out, do you go back to the bottom of the list?
That is a question that staff has asked us to address. The sentiment so far has been consistent that we don't want to punish people for opting out. So under what seems to be our evolving recommendation, one could opt out as long as one wanted to.
Okay, and I would just comment that I'll go along with whatever the majority wants to do, but I think I would prefer to have a separate list maintained for the electeds and the appointeds, just because it would be easier to manage.
Okay.
That's it. That's the only comments I have.
Okay. Mr. Santos, not to put you on the spot, please don't speak if you don't want to, but you had originally been sort of in your comments in favor of both counting the gap year, which was designed more for the one list, and having the two lists. And I was just wondering if you've stayed where you are, or if your thoughts have evolved in the conversation.
I think with regards to the separate list, if we are convinced that having one list for both appointees and electeds with a gap year, and that is equitable, I'm in support of that. I mean, I'm not wedded to two separate lists. I just want to make sure it's equitable for everyone. That's my bottom line. So if we can do that through one list, more power to it.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Of course.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I'm going to try to, I've been taking notes, so I'm going to try to summarize where I think our sense is. And also just, it appears that everyone is aligned around the idea that the goal here is to share responsibility in an equitable way. It therefore seems that the one list is the easier way to do it. The gap year corrects what might otherwise be an inherent bias against appointed trustees taking on leadership. One thing that we do need to resolve, I personally agree with Mr. Kehoe about not having minimums of service, because it would literally require everyone else on the board to decline service. And effectively, because of that, in my opinion, we in 2021 would be binding the hands of future trustees, whereas it's really a decision that they'll make in the future. If all of them don't wish to serve, it could go to a newer person. So we do need to resolve that, but I was sort of convinced by Mr. Keogh's point, and there seems to be a consistent enthusiasm or support for letting people opt out if they want to.
Right.
So if I got that right, maybe somebody wants to, make a motion. If there's a need to clarify, I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth.
I think we're good with directing staff to take this back to draft a policy.
Okay.
Based on your comments.
So staff, again, to clarify, it would be one list. Gap years would count for time served for appointees who are reappointed. It wouldn't go to a new appointee, but a returning appointee would get 1 year for their gap. There would be no minimums, and there would be no penalty for opting out of service.
Alan, when you say no minimum, there's no 2-year minimum? You don't want a minimum for?
Mr. Kehoe, if you wish to speak further, but if you don't mind me saying what you said, basically, the only way a new person would be serving under this seniority-based system is if the 8 other people declined service. A, that is unlikely, and B, I don't know that we in 2021 need to be tying the hands of whoever is sitting in our seats in 2025 or 2029 by telling them they can't opt out. That's a choice that they can make in the future. That, Mr. Kehoe, did I put your words correctly?
Absolutely, yep.
And that's also keeping some consistency. Let's not forget that we had a board of supervisor elected not long ago who immediately went into the chair. So yeah, I guess clumsily, that's what I was trying to say earlier, was that you're always going to have a person on the board that has a year's seniority over you. So it's very unlikely that this will always happen. This will ever happen. Thank
On
you.
a practical level, I would note we lose our time up to the date our service begins. Literally, the current chair would have more time than a brand new person. The current chair would have to make an affirmative decision not to step up for a second year for a brand new person to take over. So staff, do you need a motion or is this direction clear enough?
I think the direction is clear enough. I understand one list with the gap year for the appointed, no need for minimum service. And I think we might have overthought that because one of the other options for just by seat number would have made sense for minimum service. And then as far as opt-outs, indefinite opt-outs with no penalties.
That's right.
Thank you. Barry, great work. Thank you. And thank you everyone else who's been working on this. If anyone has any further comments, let's bring them up now. And if not, let's move on.
Just policy development wise, thank you, Barry. You did an excellent job.
Well, thank you. Definitely a team effort, with Mr. Kryman and Mr. Rice and with the board chairs and vice chairs and the feedback and everything. So this really, it was helped me to get this together.
Not an easy task and you did very well.
Barry, are you able to give us a timeline on next steps? I mean, it is already October. So what do you see as the timeline for this?
Well, so this will go to the Board of Investments next month, or I'm sorry, next week for the same discussion. And then I think our original plan was also take it to the joint board as well to really just kind of nail down and finalize the terms. Now, these are separate board policies, so it's conceivable that the boards may have differences in how the policy works because there's to be separate policies. But again, once we finalize these this month, I envision taking it to separate policies back to each board before the end of the year to finalize a policy so that come January, everything would be in line for this to happen so that people would be offered the opportunities to serve starting next year. And so that's sort of what my timeline would be.
Can I comment?
Yes.
Yeah, so in regards to that, I don't think we need to be tied into the other board at all on that. I think these are separate board management policies. I hope that both boards are consistent, but I don't think we should be delaying ourselves if the other board is not. So I think I would ask staff to try and bring this back in November for a discussion. I don't see why this policy couldn't be developed. Most of it's there in front of you. But obviously, if there's delays or issues and you need to bring it in December, then that would be worst case. But we're cutting it close to the wire. So I would recommend that staff bring that back to us in November so we get adopted.
Yeah, we'll have it to you by November for consideration and a vote. Okay, that's not a problem.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your input on this. We now have 4 other reports that are all for information only. And does anyone have any questions or comments of this before we move on? Great. We're on to item 10, items for staff review. Bonnie?
No items to report.
Thank you very much. We are on to good of the order.
Mr. Pryor,
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Ginsburg,
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Santos,
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Oakham,
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Moore,
I have nothing.
Mr. Kehoe.
Excellent meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins,
I have nothing.
Mr. Harris,
I'll pass. Thank you.
Ms. Zapanta.
Nothing, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Ms. Gray.
I would only like to say thank you to staff, number one, the communications, and all of the people that you displayed when you scrolled through the list of names that was responsible for our new web page, because I was a big complainer of the institutional green, and I really love what they've done. And secondly, Mr. Liu, you've done an awful lot of work on the issue of board rotation, and I appreciate it tremendously because there's a lot of little tiny working parts that you have to figure out. Well, what if this goes here, this goes here? You know, if there's a lot to it, because it was a lot for me to try to grasp in my little pea brain. So I really thank you for what you've done. And everyone else, have a great week.
Thank you. Laura Guglielmo,
Nothing, thank you.
JJ Popowich,
Nothing, thank you.
Louis Lugo,
Nothing, thank you.
Santos Kreiman.
Yes, I think I neglected to introduce Laura to the group. I think you introduced yourself at the JOG C meeting. So I wanted to make sure that I recognize, and I apologize, my memory is not good these days for some reason. But I just wanted to introduce Laura to the whole Board of Retirement. She's a tremendous addition to the team. She's been here, I believe, 3 weeks now, 4 weeks. Has a tremendous amount of experience on the administration side, and she's demonstrated that already her value to the organization. And so I wanted to give Laura an opportunity just to say a couple things about herself, and I just wanted to welcome her to the team.
Thank you, Mr. Kreiman. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be part of the LACERA team. I have a little bit about myself, I guess, as I have about 25 years experience with the city of Los Angeles, where 5 of which was in a very similar role as Assistant General Manager of the Fire and Police Pension System, and had an opportunity to learn all about the importance of defined benefit pensions and the importance that they play in the lives of public employees. And so I'm really excited about being able to contribute toward that mission and the mission of LACERA. So I'm excited to bring that. And then I also have other executive experience in the city of Los Angeles in a couple of other departments. And then I spent the last little over a year as the city manager for the city of Palos Verdes Estates, which is near to my home. And so it was really exciting to be able to have a different kind of experience and then bring all of that collective wisdom back and come and join the LACERA team. So I really appreciate the staff here at LACERA. I've been really pleased with what I've seen so far, and the management team. I really appreciate the direction that it's going. I think it's smart, and I would look forward to working with all of you. I've met a couple of you, but most of you I haven't. So it's great to be part of the team, and thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. And going back to Mr. Pryor. You're on mute, Mr. Pryor.
Still muted.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to check on one thing with staff. I know that annually, or not annually, but every few years, we may want to alter the LACERA policy regarding no sporting garb allowed at the workplace or otherwise displayed. I'll give you a quick, what do you think? Does that look good or what?
That's pretty good, pretty good.
All right.
Yes.
I support that.
I know we're
and,
not allowed to display sporting teams in the background, but come on now.
Go
It's got a
Dodgers.
big day today.
I'm not ruling you out of order, so.
All
there you go.
right, there we go. Go Dodgers.
Steve Rice.
Nothing, thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. And Chair Bernstein.
Again, Laura, welcome. And I was so glad we took the time to acknowledge all the LACERA.com people. It's really great. And finally, I share Ms. Gray's enthusiasm for Mr. Liu's work and the prospect. She was not quite as direct as she's been in the past about how unpleasant December can be. Under the old system, December is a celebratory month. We have Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and my natal birthday. And I'm very happy for any move towards making December more joyous for all. And this feels like one of them. So I'm really glad for that. We are now done with good of the order. We have disability cases to be held in closed session. Would people like a few minutes to refill your coffee cups and whatever.
Okay,
So,
quick comment,
come again,
quick comment.
Mr. Santos.
Go Yankees, Mr. Pryor.
All the esprit de corps we had on the last item, it's going to unravel right in front of us. So before that happens, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll come back in closed session at 10:10.